Welcome to Ghost Spirits Legends and Beyond. I'm your host, Taylor.
And I'm Jessica.
We are here at the Old City Cemetery in Galveston, Texas. We are accompanied by a tour guide since it is after dusk and they prefer us not to be here after dusk hours. She refers to herself as the Lady in Black. You can book her online with Historical Ghost Tours of Galveston, I believe. I could be wrong.
I have nothing to add. I was just saying, we're going to explore the cemetery at night and see if we catch anything. We have our lovely ghost spirit box. We've got a couple of other gadgets and some new cameras, and we have night vision cameras now, so we're going to play with that a little bit. And come join us while we tour the Old City Cemetery at night.
You probably know some of this. I've been to, and you can record me if you want. Now, the first inhabitants of Galveston Island were Kawankawa Indians, okay? Now, these were Native Americans, but they weren't what I call sophisticated. Like the Lakota, the Ojibwe, and other Native Americans, a lot of them had art. They made beautiful moccasins and shirts and dresses and baby carriers. But these Native Americans didn't. But they had a great diet: shrimp, fish, oysters, crab. You know, they're not to like, okay? And so these warriors, they averaged 6 feet tall. When at this time in the 1800s, the average, settler, white Western settler, was maybe 5'7". Remember, men and women were smaller in those days. Their nutrition wasn't as good as ours, okay? And I think it was this difference. These Native Americans, most of their diet was protein. But coming from Europe, a lot of Western people, their basic diet was basically beer and bread, okay? Not so much protein. So I think that's why they didn't grow as tall, okay? Now, they lived around here till about the 1870s. They got sick from Western diseases. Like we might get mumps and measles, but it won't kill us, okay? But it killed them that had no immunity to this. So one person of a tribe, a band, got measles in about 2 weeks. Most of that tribe might be dead, okay? So that was unfortunately, but that happened all across America and Mexico and South America. Okay? The next thing is we are a real pirate island. We had John Lafitte living here from 1817 to 1821. He anchored his ships about at Harborside and 13th Street and built a little village called Campeche. It's just a place to sleep, you know, at night or sit in during the day. But they wanted to be close to their ships because they didn't want their ships stolen. Okay? Now, he and his brother Pierre were born in France. We know that much about him. Now, the whole family moves to New Orleans. We don't know why they grew up to be pirates, but they did. Now, John Lafitte was what you might call a gentleman pirate. He was very concerned about his reputation, and he would correct you if you called him a pirate. In fact, he would get very mad. He wanted to be called a privateer. Now, anybody know the difference between a privateer and a pirate?
I don't.
Privateer works for the government. Okay, you get a letter. It's called a letter of marque. It's a letter of permission to raid that country's enemies, but only the enemies. So if I was an American captain, I had my own crew and ship, and we were at war with Britain, the American government would give me a letter of permission to plunder those British ships, okay? I know it's a little chilly tonight with the wind. A pirate, they'll plunder anybody, okay? That's the difference. So, let there be no mistake, because Lafitte was a pirate. Now, the people of New Orleans loved him because he'd plunder ships in the Gulf and bring back beautiful velvet, silk, fine wine, good cognac, beautiful silver and gold jewelry, and sell it to the people of New Orleans at a discount. Okay? So the people of New Orleans love him. But you know, Jefferson and the United States, they buy the Louisiana Purchase, the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon of France. Okay? This includes New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. Okay? Now, Louisiana becomes a state in 1812. You have to have a certain amount of population to become a state. Go from a territory to a state. That's what Louisiana did. Now it gets its first American governor in 1812. For some reason, we don't know why, he hates Lafitte. He starts harassing Lafitte. Okay? Now this is 1812. In 1815, at the Battle of New Orleans, Lafitte helps General Jackson win the Battle of New Orleans, which wins the War of 1812 for America. Okay? General Jackson keeps his promise. Lafitte helps him with men and supplies. He keeps his promise and gets him a presidential pardon from President Monroe. But Governor Claiborne, the governor of Louisiana, he doesn't care. He keeps harassing Lafitte. So in 1817, he wakes up one morning in New Orleans and says, "Boys, we're out of here." He comes to Galveston Island with 1,000 pirates. Now, there's only him and the Concord here. There's no city of Galveston yet. Okay? Now, in 1821, though, one of his captains raised a U.S. merchant ship in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is not Texas, this is not Mexico or the U.S., it's still part of Spain. Nevertheless, the U.S. government sends a naval warship out here. They get with Lafitte. They tell him, you shouldn't have done that. You have two choices now. You can either leave, pack up and leave, or we're going to hang all the pirates with you being the first, Mr. Lafitte. Lafitte says, what a coincidence. I was already planning on leaving. And he does. He packs up and he leaves. Now, we do not know what happened to him. Many theories. Some people say he died of a fever off the coast of Mexico. Some people say, no, he died, he took a bullet while plundering another vessel. We don't know. Pirates did not keep good records. It wasn't part of their lifestyle. They're more likely to plunder and then go party. Okay? The third thing is we were in the middle of the American Civil War here. We had battles both on land and on the water. We had a great big battle on the water called the Battle of Galveston Bay between the Confederate and Union navies. Okay? Which brings me to the fact that we have buried here in these 7 cemeteries, War of 1812 did, a couple of them, Confederate and Union did, Spanish American, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Then it stops. Because guess what, folks? These 7 cemeteries are full now. There are no more active burials. But I will be showing you the earliest tombstone I have found and the last one that was buried here. Okay? So that's the Civil War. The last thing, the most impactful event that ever happened to Galveston Island was the 1900 hurricane. We're going to talk more about that at the very end. But suffice it to say, it was the worst U.S. disaster, natural disaster there ever was. Still is on the books. And that was September 8th, 1900. We lost a third of the population. That means we lost between 8,000 and 10,000 people in one night here on the island. Okay? Keep in mind, it was a Category 4 hurricane. There's only one more step above that, and that's a Category 5. Okay? So we're going to talk about that. But I would say that's the event that had the most impact on the island. Okay? Now, Galveston was established in 1838. We did not have a cemetery till 1839 when the Galveston Land Company, they were the men that established Galveston. This area had been explored before the Texas Revolution, and people knew this would be a great port city because we have a great harbor and a great bay. Okay? So, after the revolution that happened in 1836, Galveston gets established. Finally, in 1839, they donate this plot of land. This is Old City Cemetery. This is the oldest cemetery in Galveston. Okay? Now, before that, people buried people, dead people, wherever they could. So if you walked around downtown, you've probably been walking on the old bones.
Oh,
Okay? I guarantee you. Now, we did not have the seawall till after the hurricane. What there was were sand dunes before you went down to the water. They'd even tried to bury some coffins in the sand dunes. That didn't work out. The wind and waves uncovered these coffins pretty quick. And you got to see Grandma's coffin a lot sooner than you wanted to. Okay? So that's why the Galveston Land Company donated this plot. Then they donated a second plot, which is now Oleander, but used to be called Pottersfield. Does everybody know what that is? That's for people that can't afford to bury themselves. Okay? Now, there are 7 cemeteries here. After Old City Cemetery and Oleander started, we took everybody. If you were Catholic or Episcopalian or Baptist, it didn't matter. But the Episcopalians in 1844, 5 years later, they say we want our own cemetery. They purchased that land. Then the Catholics say, well, we want our own, so they have purchased that, and then the Jewish. And then there are 2 more city cemeteries in this City of the Dead. There are Evergreen and then New City Cemetery. A lot of times historians, including me, will call that the yellow fever field. It's where we had quite a few epidemics of yellow fever. Anybody know how you get yellow fever? Until 1905, we did not know how you got yellow fever. It's from a specific mosquito that we have now eradicated. So you don't have to worry about yellow fever unless you're going to the jungles of Africa, okay? Or maybe around the Amazon basin or river, okay? But before that, people thought you got yellow fever from just each other. They weren't sure, okay, at all. But we've had some years that we've had very bad epidemics, okay? And a lot of those people are buried in New City Cemetery. That's why we call it the yellow fever field. Now, when we built the seawall, we completed the first section in 1905. That's right in front of the Galvez, okay? The way we had to build it in sections because it was so expensive, nothing like that had ever been done in the world. We were the first people to build a seawall, okay, to keep out the waves. This was directly because of the 1900 hurricane. Because downtown, the water was, 12 to 15 feet deep. So, now, we wanted to raise this whole eastern part of the island, okay, where downtown and people live. So we had to dredge the ship channel anyway. So instead of just pushing that extra sand and dirt to the side, using pipes and pumps, they put that extra sand and dirt onto the island. We raised these 7 cemeteries 3 different times. That means we have 3 layers of dead here. In some places 4. So what would happen is the city would put an ad in the newspaper. Remember, there's no television or radio. So they put an ad in the newspaper. Everybody read the newspaper front to back. And they'd say, if you have a loved one buried in the Broadway cemeteries, contact us. You had to pay to have your loved one's tombstones raised. And if you didn't pay, they just put the dirt on it.
wow.
Now, some of these Mausoleums you see are short. I'm going to show you a shorter one later. If you didn't pay to have it raised, they just push the dirt around the outside. So that one was raised twice, but not the last time. So if we were to try it, we're not going to do this. But if we were going to try to go in one, we'd have to get a ladder to go 10 feet down.
Wow.
Okay? And you'll see quite a few that were not raised all 3 times. Now, we know there's about 1,200 markers, okay? But multiply that by probably 4. I'm pretty sure there are at least 6,000 bodies buried in these 7 cemeteries, okay? There's a lot more than you see. Now, this road was widened during modern times, but I think it originally was just big enough for a carriage to go through. So, we don't know, but there probably are people buried right where we're stepping right now, okay? The other thing I want to talk about is a lot of these tombstones and burials cover the Victorian and Edwardian periods. Now, I want to talk to you about those people. There were 3 things. 1, very religious. 2, very sentimental. 3, somewhat superstitious. In the old days, people died at home. Your doctor came to your home to treat you, okay? When somebody was dying, they would assign a member of the family the task of covering all the mirrors with a black cloth. They thought a newly released soul could get trapped in the mirror. My great-grandmother told me never buy an old mirror because it might have a soul trapped in there. Now, I have some old mirrors, but I haven't had any problems so far.
Keep it that way, huh?
Yeah. So, we're going to go into this oldest cemetery, Old City Cemetery, 1839. And we're going to talk about the symbols that we see on the tombstones, okay? Every flower had a meaning during Victorian times. Every plant had a meaning. There were many symbols. People put all kinds of things on their tombstones and their children's tombstones. And we're going to talk about that first. And then I'm going to show you some mausoleums and share with you some stories that I have researched as well.